It is common to come across all kinds of so-called psychology tests in newspaper or popular magazine like this. These tests claim that by answering them, you will be able to know yourself better in terms of personality, interest, type of friendship or romantic relationship that is suitable for you and so on. But are all these tests considered standardized and valid psychological tests and measurement? First, we need to know what it means by psychology test and measurement. In the module, it is stated in the test is an instrument designed to measure selected psychological and mechanical attributes of an individual. The academic and scientific definitions of psychology tests and measurement are that they are standardized procedures for sampling behavior and describing it with categories or scores, and a popular definition by Gregory. In addition, most tests have norms or standards by which the results can be used to predict more importantly, the behaviors. While Kaplan and Saguzzo define a test as a measurement device or technique used to quantify behavior or aid in the understanding and prediction of behavior. In summary, most psychology tests possess these defining features: standardized procedure, behavior sample, score or categories, norms or standards, prediction of non-test behavior, and these also become the basic principle in making a psychological test and measurement scientific and significant from academic perspectives. Sounds confusing? Don't panic. Let us look at these principles one by one. First, standardized procedure. Standardized procedure means the procedure for administrating a test are uniform from one examiner and setting to another. This means that it does not matter whether it's you or me or he or she who administers a test in different venues, then all the procedure, there will be procedure to follow and it should be the same. Hence, one cannot simply change a procedure abruptly. Then there is the behavior sample. Each psychology test can only measure certain parts of the whole behavior. For example, if a test is to measure the personality of a person, then it should only focus on the samples of behavior that relate to personality. The test will be confusing if other samples of behavior, for example, behavior related to intelligence, for example, of a person, are included in the personality test. That will be a bit strange. Next, there are scores or categories. These are not difficult to understand. A psychological test should be able to produce scores in order to understand how the test taker performs in the test. Meanwhile, categories helps us to interpret where a score stands. For example, whether the score of an intelligence test is within average, above average, or below average of the category. Norms or standards means that after administrating a test, the test score is usually interpreted by comparing it with the scores obtained by others in the same test. Norm is a summary of test results for a large and representative group of subjects. In simple words, let's say you have undergone an intelligence test and obtained a score. So this score will be compared to the scores of others who are about the same age like you in order to interpret how you have performed. Without scores, without norms and standards, a test actually is no meaning at all. Lastly is the prediction of non-test behavior. For instance, after a motivation test shows that your friend is high in motivation, then it should be able to forecast or predict that he will have high productivity in terms of work. After knowing the definitions and principles of psychology tests and measurement, think about this question. Do you think the tests as circulated in the newspaper and many popular magazines as mentioned earlier in this video considered a valid or good psychological test and measurement? Next, briefly we look into the types of tests. Based on the ways of administration, there are individual tests which are administered only to one person at a time, whereas group tests are administered to more than one person at a time by a single examiner. While based on behavioral and psychological aspects, there are a few major types of tests as shown in the following table. Next, we would like to know a bit about the history of psychology tests and measurement. That is how it emerged throughout the centuries. The initial forms of testing actually existed over 4,000 years ago in Imperial China, where an examination system was established to select suitable candidates for civil service. In the Han Dynasty, for example, there were 5 topics tested for this purpose, namely civil law, military affairs, agriculture, revenue, and geography. In the Western civilization, after experimental psychology flourished in the late 1800s, in continental Europe and Great Britain, psychologists started to use objective procedure to measure various psychology propensities. Sir Francis Galton set up a psychometric laboratory in London in 1884 and conducted tests and measures on both the physical and behavioral domains. James McCain Cattell in 1890 invented the term mental test and contributed to the development of rating skills, questionnaires, and statistical methods, which are important parts in psychology tests and measurement. The contemporary history of psychological testing sees the development of tests related to intelligence. Squirrel and Sequin define the concept of mental retardation. The earliest test constructed was the Sequin form board test, which was used to evaluate people who were mentally disabled. Over in France, the Binet-Simon scale was developed in 1905 for identifying mentally retarded school children for special instruction. This is the first intelligence test developed, and it was revised many times in later years and is still widely used today all over the world. Kraepelin, on the other hand, devised a series of examinations in 1912 for the evaluation of emotionally impaired people. In 1939, the first version of Bachelor Intelligence Scales were published, which have provided some innovations in intelligence testing compared to the earlier Binet-Simon scale. During World War I, in the United States, the demand for large-scale group testing emerged in order to evaluate the big number of military recruits. Group tests for human abilities such as the Army Alpha and the Army Beta were invented during that period of time. Later, we see personality testing blossom just before and after the World War II, especially during the period of 1920 to 1940. After that, many new applied psychology tests emerged, and the most important ones were in relation to neuropsychology, health psychology, forensic psychology, tests and measurement for various developmental stages such as children, adolescents, adults, and elderly, and other areas to measure various aspects of human behavior and mental states. Before we end, allow me to discuss some key points on the advantages and limitations of psychology tests and measurement. The advantages of psychology tests and measurement are: first, they are more objective and standardized. Therefore, psychology test is less subject to bias. Second, they help to uncover talent and personal characteristics that may be otherwise overlooked. Third, great amount of information can be collected in a relatively short period of time by using tests. Fourth, reduce cost of selection and placement because tests help us to select the suitable person and place them in the appropriate position in workplace. Fifth, tests provide a healthy basis for comparing different individuals. This makes the evaluation on students and employees in education and organization settings fairer. While the disadvantages of tests and measurements can be seen from the following facts. 1. A single test measures only part of the total information on an individual and is not holistic enough. 2. Testing environment will easily create tension among test takers and may have negative impact on their real performance. 3. There are cross-cultural issues that usually tests and measurement have limitation to deal with. This is because a test developed in a country may not be fully suitable to be used in another country. 4. Tests are prone to human errors, especially when the administration and scoring procedures are complicated. And lastly, testing and professional knowledge are needed in administering and interpreting tests and measurement, especially for those better tests and measurement. Therefore, lacking of professionals will obstruct the application more widely. That will limit the usage of the test.